What's going on, my friends? You got Stirk here, and today I've got a video I'm very excited for. We are going to be going through the Kanto Pokédex, but we are going to make sure that there are no duplicate types. This is something I want to end up doing with every single region, going through one by one. Starting with Kanto obviously makes the most sense, and this is a rich area because this is the second biggest Pokédex. There's a lot to work with and a lot that would be fun to change. Put a lot of work into this over the past few weeks, so very excited to just go ahead and hop on in. So first off, we got some notes here. First off, no duplicate types. That's in the title. No inverse dupes. So what I mean by that is if I have an electric and dark type Pokemon, I am not also going to allow a dark and electric type Pokemon. To me, that's just the same thing with more steps, right? That's essentially, when it comes down to it, the same thing. So we're not going to allow that. It must keep part of the original type. So if we had a fairy and steel Pokemon, it would at least need to stay fairy or steel, keep one or the other, or sometimes both. I'm going to give the best logic behind these type changes that I can. Obviously, you're going to disagree with some. That's okay. That's part of the fun of this. I want to hear back what you think on these. And some might not end up being the best type combo. Some might just have to be the best remaining type available to them that makes some sort of sense. On some of these, I'll spend a little bit more time explaining. Some of these are just going to make so much sense that we'll kind of just have to breeze through them. And this is going to be final stages only, or if it's a single stage, something like that. We're not going to be doing this for like Charmeleon and Squirtle, right? Like they're not going to make it on there. I'm sorry, Bulbasaur, I forgot you too. Just because that would make this take too long. So let's just go ahead and start off first with the fire type. You can see our roster here of the fire types in this region. If you end up not seeing a Pokemon on a type, that means it's going to end up being on a different type that it's connected to. So hopefully I haven't forgotten anything. If I did, please let me know. Maybe we'll see what we can figure out about that. So first off, we have Charizard being a fire, and what type? It used to be fire and flying. I could keep it that way. Do we have other options that we like better for that typing? Yes. So we're going to make it a fire and dragon. I think a lot of us can agree this makes a whole lot of sense. Looking at it, it has a draconic look to it, and Mega Charizard X is a fire and dragon type. We're going to keep with that theme. It's just kind of a home run here. It kind of always should have been that if not for balancing. Next up, we have Ninetales. To me, this one's a bit tougher. And in fact, we're going to look at Ninetales and Rapidash, and I think you're going to agree that a lot of people would prefer me switch the types that I'm going to end up going with, but I will explain it. So Ninetales could be a few things. To me, the ones that really stick out would be a Psychic or Fairy type to go along with that. It just kind of has that beautiful regal elegance. You get the feeling that it's very smart, that it's very mystical. Looking at its move pool, it learns a little bit more Psychic moves, but I think with its connection to Alolan Ninetales, Fire and Fairy makes so much more sense. I'm going to be doing that a lot with these, to where if they have some sort of form that we can go off of, I'm going to love them having some sort of connection. I don't like Fire and Ice for it, but Fire and Fairy makes a whole lot of sense. It has that beautiful look. I could see it learning a lot of Fairy moves if they chose to expand its move pool, and I think it just makes a lot of sense having that connection to Alolan Ninetales. So you may have been thinking that Rapidash should have gotten that, being a unicorn, which is kind of like a mythical animal that you would think of getting that fairy tale type. Not only that, it does learn moves like Play Rough. Not only that, and when you look at its Galarian form, it does become part fairy type, but it also becomes part psychic type, and this way they could both have a connection to their type counterpart that they have from in a different region. And to me, that makes sense. And Rapidash does learn psychic moves as well. It learns in Headbutt. It learns moves kind of like that. So I think there's still that connection. And if you even take it a step further back, Galarian Ponyta is only psychic type. So you could argue it's a little bit more of a psychic type than a fairy type. So there's still a pretty good connection here, and I think both of those work out well. And then we don't have to worry about either of those types being taken by any of these next ones. Next up with Arcanine, it's a pure fire type normally. Are we going to add a type to it? That's kind of tough, right? It does have its counterpart in the Hisui region that gains the rock type. It gets a ton of moves, right? Like it's got kind of a menacing look. Could it be dark? It's a fighter. It can learn ground moves. It can learn electric moves. But when it comes down to it, I think Arcanine is just such a great embodiment of the fire type. Like, I think when we start giving things dual types, sometimes when something is just a single type, we're kind of disappointed by it. But I think if something represents a type so well that it's just that, I actually kind of like it for that. And it does still have the fire type, tying it to Hisui and Arcanine. So for me personally, I actually like that where we end up with that. Coming up with Flareon next, you're going to see a theme here with the evolutions. But once again, this is a Pokemon that is pure fire. There were a lot of just pure types or types that were used for like 5 Pokemon in Gen 1. And so I love, this is part of the reason I wanted to give it diversity. It might not always be a better type for them, but it at least separates them a little. Looking at it, it's a plushy, furry, lovable Pokemon. I could almost see this being real in real life, just without the flames, like change up the coloration a little bit, and you feel like you could have the evolutions as pets. I feel like fire and normal is actually really good for this. It comes from the normal type Eevee. With that branching off into all of them, they kind of keep their connection to Eevee, right? Yes, it is this fiery beast, but it's also like a fox or dog or whatever you're thinking it has that connection to. That kind of brings it back to it. A lot of times, and with the early designs, if something were some sort of mammal or rodent, we kind of almost just wanted to make it a part normal type. Coming up next with Magmar, to me, this was one of the toughest ones. It does learn like random electric and ground moves. You know, it does have these cuffs on them that look like they might be made out of steel. Ultimately, I went with the dark type. I just feel like the look it's wearing is almost kind of like this rocker, punk, biker type of thing that it's got going on. It living in a volcano, I almost gave it the ground type. We're also going to see kind of a trio formed between these three Pokemon that have very big ties. So I think Fire Dark ends up fitting pretty well for it. When you look at Magmortar, which it turns into, it has kind of almost like this dark, evil, clowny smile to it, which I think also goes along with the dark type. That might be kind of a weird choice, but on some of these, I feel like I kind of just really had to use my imagination. Next up, we got Moltres, Fire, and what? It's Fire Flying. Let's not overthink this. It's a flying type. It's one of the legendary birds. It has to have that type. It fits it a lot better than Charizard, and it gives it the connection to Galarian Moltres. Up next, this is what we've got, the whole roster of Fire types together. If I do have any mistakes in any double types, I apologize. I don't think I do. Up next, we have the Grass type. And this was hard because three of these are grass and poison, and let me tell you, they all fit pretty well with that, so it was really hard, so don't judge me too hard here. But first up, we have the grass one, and I did a Pokemon starter video where I gave none of them the same overlapping types. It was a lot of fun to make. In that video, I believe I kept Venusaur, Grass, Poison. Not all these will keep those same types because to me, I'm not looking this and I'm not comparing Venusaur to all the other grass type starters. I am looking at it and comparing it to the grass types in the Kanto region. So I thought about keeping that the same. I thought there was a Pokemon that actually fit it better though. You're going to think this is weird, but I actually made it Grass Fairy. A lot of Venusaur's Pokédex entries are about the soothing aroma that comes off of it and how it just has these healing properties. It learns a lot of healing moves. Even its design having like the pink, the beautiful tree coming off of it. I think grass and fairy always kind of make a lot of sense going together as like these naturey, beautiful types. It might be weird thinking of Venusaur as a fairy. I don't know if it learns any fairy moves actually, but I think it actually kind of makes sense with its Pokédex entries. I didn't want to make it dragon just because Charizard was already a dragon. I kind of wanted to keep some sort of theme going along. You're also going to see a trio with the Kanto starters on this outside of the Fire, Water, Grass. Next up, we got Vileplume. It's a grass type. What else do we make it? I considered making it something like Grass Dark because I believe in the Gold and Silver games, I think there might be a Vileplume on Karen, the Dark type Elite Four Leaders team. So there was that. But it's to me, it was just a great grass poison, right? It is a poisonous mushroom. They're known them and Vileplume, they're known for like the stench that they have that's not quite so sweet a stench. Like Gloom does that to like keep danger away. It wafts that into the air. I just feel like grass poison is kind of a cool thing for it. Tangela being a straight up grass type in the normal games, do we want to make it dark because it's kind of like hiding within itself? Is it like grass and normal? I don't know. The more I look at it, I don't see a whole lot of elements besides grass. It's a little dude that's covered in vines that seems to be just like hiding. And I think it's just kind of perfect to be, once again, it's an embodiment of grass. And I think that's fantastic for it. Next up, we have Victory Bell. A lot of Pokédex entries about this having such like impressive toxicity that it can melt things. Being grass and poison makes a lot of sense with a lot of grass type Pokemon, but I felt like poison just fit Vileplume a little better, even though we could have done the dark Karen connection. I wanted to do grass dark here because you always see it biting and crunching on things, which first off, those are dark type moves, but also some of its Pokédex entries do talk about the fact that like when people go into the jungle where these live, they don't come back. Like its Pokédex entries make it seem kind of evil. It's got the Team Rocket connection. On top of that, it does learn a lot of grass type moves like Sucker Punch and Knockoff, so I just think it makes a lot of sense for it. And then Exeggutor, I feel like I guess there's a lot of ways you could go with it, but there's nothing to me that like really pops out. So sometimes I feel like if it just already has a type, let it keep that type, right? It's got its different expressions and heads. Sometimes emotions kind of go with psychic type, but also like three heads, maybe it's smarter, right? And it, no matter what, it keeps that grass type connection to Alolan Exeggutor, so I think that works out really good. On to the water type. First off, here's all the grass types against each other. Seeing that we have a little more diversity here, onto the water type, and this one is going to take a while. Water and normal are huge in the Kanto region. A lot of poison types too, but like a lot of water types. In fact, you might even see one missing here. You're going to see it on a different one. So let's go through this. There will be some that I think will be argued with on me here. That's fine. First off, Blastoise, what way do you go? Could it be water and rock because it's got the turtle shell? Does it stay pure water because that's what it used to be? It learns a lot of dark moves. It's kind of draconic. I went ahead and went with steel. I think we can all kind of agree that makes sense. It's got its steel cannons. When it mega evolves, it gets more steel cannons. It does learn some steel type moves, and like it's just got that like rock hard armor too, which I guess I just said rock, but it makes sense being a steel type. I don't think there's too much to this. Starmie, Golduck, and Slowbro. This is where it's going to get a little tough, right? Because we look at these next three, only one of them can be water psychic. Now, in real life, only two of them are water and psychic, but I think a lot of us agree that we always felt like Golduck should have been as well. So looking at these three, who gets to keep it? So first off, with Starmie, the first thing I think of when I look at this, yeah, it's a starfish. I think of that gemstone. And like it's got this rock hard exterior, but I think of that glowing gem. It learns moves like Power Gem, like Meteor Beam. To me, I actually really like this as a water rock type. I think it makes a lot more sense. That's going to steal a type from a few months later. We're going to see how we end up going with that, but I think the gemstone to me is the most prominent thing. I love the thought of that being water and rock. I don't think it takes away any of its power. It makes it a little worse defensively, but it's really good offensively. Next up, we have Golduck. So Golduck or Slowbro, who is going to get the psychic type? Well, let's just say Golduck's pre-evolution has Psy in its name, Psyduck, right? And it's known for these psychic powers that it has when it has these headaches. Golduck, we see kind of do the same thing in the anime. They both learn a plethora of psychic moves, like via TM, but also just so many through level up. Like sometimes it almost feels more like a psychic Pokemon than a water type. To me, I think it's just kind of a home run. It fits their design too. I just think it works out really well. So Slowbro, what in the world are we going to do with this? This is one of the most controversial ones I'm going to do. Do we make this pure water? I thought about maybe like water ground because it is something that almost seems like it kind of prefers to live on the ground instead of the water. I kind of wanted to do water normal, but that already felt a little bit taken. And then from there, there's just so many water types. What else do I do? I'm going to make it water and dark. You're going to call me crazy. There is going to be a connection back to this, but I think we don't spend enough time thinking about the fact that a Shelder biting its tail just eternally becomes part of its design. Once again, we're kind of doing a play on words. The move bite is a dark type move, but also like we look at Slowbro, it's still this goofy, lovable guy, but look at what the Shelder does when it changes. It looks purely evil. It's taking over part of its body. When it Mega Evolves, it keeps taking over more of it. There's something almost like dark and evil about that. And when we can kind of compare it to the Galarian form it's going to turn into, obviously that's a poison and psychic type. Stay tuned. In a few generations, this will make a little more sense. We will make some connections out of this, but looking at it, I actually think it makes a lot of sense. And I like the thought that not every dark type Pokemon has to be the most menacing thing you've ever seen. Not every fairy type Pokemon always just has to be this cutesy little thing. We can make a lot of different connections here. So I actually end up really liking how this works out, but I think it's going to be a little controversial because it's weird and because I think there are a few more Pokemon that we might wish we could have this type on, but I stand by what I went with. That's what we're rolling with. Up next, we have Tentacruel, Water, and Poison. We're going to keep it there. You know, here it does say zapping, and the jellyfish and SpongeBob do seem like they're zapping more than stinging, but we all know, got to worry about being stung by a jellyfish. The toxic look is just there, and Tentacruel's design makes a whole lot of sense. Up next, we got Gyarados. This was a tough one because, like, right, Water Dark would have made a whole lot of sense of this, especially when we think about the fact of what its Mega Evolution is. Water and Dragon makes a whole lot of sense, but there's something that kind of ends up needing it a little more. We could make it pure water, but it almost feels too cool for that. What other way do we go? We're keeping it water flying. Sometimes I think it's best not to take away their design. Plus, how hilarious is it seeing a balloon Gyarados just flying through the air? Maybe it doesn't feel like the best typing, especially when it does have the Mega Gyarados, but to me, I think sometimes it just makes sense to keep it with what it's at. And I mean, it does learn a plethora of flying moves. A few, you know, it gets Hurricane, it gets Bounce. Twister, I guess, is a dragon move, but I don't know. The lore of Magikarp jumping so high and then that it's essentially flying, I think can kind of tie in here okay. Really, when it comes down to it, there's so many water types, this was hard. I kind of told myself if I can do this with Kanto, I can do this with any region. So next up with Lapras, Water and Wet. So Water Rock has been taken. Water Rock has already been stolen from some other mons. Could it be Water Ice? I mean, that's what it used to be. That's pretty fantastic typing. Water Dragon could be kind of cool. It's kind of got that ancient kind of look and feel from it. It was endangered at one point. It does have a draconic look. It learns dragon moves. It learns dragon dance. But I gave it Water and Fairy. Once again, it's got that beautiful thing to it. Not every fairy type has to be pink, but it's based off of the legends kind of the Loch Ness Monster, right? And it does have this move pool that talks about like healing moves that it has and it helps out people. It just has this fairy vibe to me. And I think the Gigantamax form, like looking as beautiful and regal as it does, to me kind of enforces the water fairy. It's a very good water ice type Pokemon. I hate to strip the ice type from it, but like there were kind of a decent amount of options to choose from for the ice type. So this felt like the best thing. Coming up next with Seadra, I feel like we know where this is going. It's got the scales. We know that it turns into Kingdra. It makes a good water dragon. Some people would probably argue they'd rather have Gyarados as it, and like maybe you could almost flip it because the fins kind of do look like wings, but like to me, it's not enough to change it, right? Like they're based off of like sea dragons. There's stuff like that. I know it's based off of seahorse as well, but like to me, the dragon type just makes sense. There's no sense spending too much time on it. Learns a lot of dragon moves. It's already got that in its heritage with Kingdra. So next up, we have Seaking. This one was really tough because like, what do you do with it? You know, like there's just not a whole lot. It's got the horn, right? It's got sharp stuff about it. Has teeth, which is kind of cool. I hadn't really noticed that before. When you look at its move pool, it learns some stuff outside of it. Like, does its ability Lightning Rod have anything to do with it? It could be just a normal type because it's literally like what? It's a Goldeen turning into a Seaking. It's a Goldfish turning into a Koi. Some things just need to be pure water, right? Like you almost feel like you could have a Goldeen or a Sea King in your fish tank. So something's got to be pure water. There's nothing too exciting about it, so I think it's actually pretty fitting. Its Pokédex entries are kind of cool, but once again, like it just sounds like a very protective mother or father fish. So next up, we got Vaporeon. We already know where we're going with this. It's going to be water and normal type. To once again to tie it back to the evolutions, I feel like a lot of people might be angry by this, but if you think about it, if you have a bunch of EVs all coming from a normal type, it's not that crazy for them to keep part of that normal type to be tied back to it, but also like they're good candidates to come back to that. Next up, we have Kingler being water and what? It's really not bad as a pure water type. Steel, rock, things like that are always going to be cool with something with like this tough armor and these hard claws. But to me, like crabs kind of look like bugs, right? They have the extra legs. They move in kind of an unnerving way. A crustacean or whatever they are, I feel like there are similarities. So I feel like it's as good a pick as any to make a water bug. It does learn things like X Scissor and Fury Cutter. So here it makes sense. Cloyster, will it be our water and ice type, considering that is what it is in real life? It obviously can't be pure water. The rock type's taken, the steel type's taken. Has kind of a menacing look. Could it be a dark type? Nope, that's taken. There's really not a whole lot left. Spoiler alert, it is not an ice type. We are saving that. We're making it a water and ghost type. So, like, looking at its eyes kind of hiding within the shell, especially in the older Gen 1 design, it and Shelter, it almost even looked darker and harder to see in there. To me, it always looked like a Ghastly. And, like, today I find out that Cloyster is right in front of Ghastly in the original Pokédex. Like, especially if you look back at their original designs. As a kid, I absolutely thought there was some sort of relation. Like, okay, a Ghastly went inside of a shell and, like, possessed it or something. And, like, that'd be kind of cool. So, Water Ghost is actually kind of cool for this. I don't know that it learns any ghost moves, but you could pretty easily teach it Shadow Ball. It literally looks like it has a ball of shadow inside of its shell. Coming up next, Poliwrath. We're running out of types. It's already the water fighting type. It's got the boxing gloves on here. It's not the most inspiring fighting type to me, but like it is kind of buff. It does have its gloves on. He looks like he's ready to toss some fists at people. So water fighting it is, and that is the whole list. Coming up next from here, it's going to get shorter. We're on to the ice type. We only have three. Dugong, you know where we're going with this. We're going to make it ice and water. It used to be water and ice. We flipped it around so it could be ice first, mainly because we were running out of screen on that water type. But also, like, it makes just as much sense as an ice type, right? It's a seal sliding around in the ice, looking majestic as can be. Coming up next, we have the Jinx type. The Jinx type. We have Jinx, who is another ice type. A lot of ways you could go with this. I always felt like a Medusa design would have been cool for a Mega, make it like ice and dark or something like that. It had the ice and psychic type. I really don't see a reason to take it away. Like a lot of humanoid Pokemon have psychic or fighting. She learns psychic moves. It all makes sense, right? She's got that mystical power within her. Up next, oh, and then Jinx Ice, Psychic, going back to Magmar. It's kind of a trio with that and Electabuzz. Magmar was Dark, so we have Dark, Psychic. Let's see if you can figure out what Electabuzz will be. But Articuno, we have Ice and Flying. It's staying with Moltres and Zapdos. Once again, it just makes too much sense, and it's a flying legendary bird, but now it still has that connection to Articuno, still being a flying type. Galarian Articuno looks so cool. Coming up next, here's the full ice picture that we got. We have the electric type. This is one that I think a lot of these were kind of hard on. So starting off with Raichu, electric and what? We could make it a fairy type because it is adorable. Part of me wanted to make it a steel type because I used to think the end of its tail had like steel on it. Now I'm not so sure what that's even made out of. It doesn't look quite as metallic or steely as it used to. It becomes a psychic type in its Alolan form. It could be a water type because of the surfing Pikachu and because of Raichu Alola surfing around on it. To me, it's kind of a great poster boy for just being the electric type. Once again, it's an embodiment of it. It evolves with the Thunderstone if it so chooses to use it. I think it's good as just a regular electric Pokemon. It could have been electric normal as well. That's going to be taken. Up next, Electrode, electric and what? It used to just be pure electric. Obviously, when it turns into its regional variant, that becomes electric and grass. It'd be kind of cool for it to have another type. It obviously has to because we gave pure electric to Raichu. I thought about doing maybe like fire because of their affinity to explode. Thought about doing maybe like electric and ghost. Making me think of Rotom because it almost kind of is like possessing an inanimate object. I went ahead and made it the dark type. Something about something that wants to explode all the time seems kind of evil. It does learn moves like taunt and foul play, so like it does have a dark move pool. It is kind of sneaky. I feel like being that type of thing that would hide in something that looks like a Pokeball and like jump out at you kind of is like a nasty, maybe not quite evil type thing, but a little bit dirty, and dark. So next up we have Magneton. We could have had this on the steel screen because it's electric and steel. Not too much to explain about it, right? It makes sense. It's a magnet. Both of those fit really well. Magnet Pokemon. Up next we have Electabuzz. You probably have already guessed it's going to have that type triangle with dark, psychic, and fighting, all of them being super effective against one another and resistant slash immune to. You know, they blew it. This should have just always been an electric fighting type. It looks really good as it becomes Electivire. We can just they learn fighting type moves. They all do have like that strong look, like they would just punch the crap out of you. I don't know why they weren't always this. It's kind of a bummer. They're just pure electric. We would make it electric fighting. Jolteon, we know where this is going. It's going to be electric and normal. So I said this was tough. Really, it was just tough with Electrode and Raichu. Those took me a while. This makes sense, right? It's going along with the path we already made. It's got that tie back to Eevee. Coming up next with Zapdos, the legendary bird will stay an electric and flying type, and once again have that connection to its Galarian counterpart with the flying type. And this is what we've got for electric. Coming up next, electric's my favorite type, by the way. So always fun going through that. With steel, that we got nothing, right? And I say that there are some steel types we've already seen. Nothing's primary steel. They were all grouped in with something else. It just seemed like extra work. Same thing with dark. There's nothing. There are a lot of dark types that I'm adding. None of them were primary dark. It was too much effort to like try to make them primary dark and move them over. It just seemed right to group them in with their other types. So coming up next, we have the rock type with Onyx, Golem, Omastar, Kabutops, Aerodactyl. You'll see a few missing. They're grouped in with other types. Onyx, what do we make you? You're a big rock snake. You're going to keep the rock type. It could have just as easily only kept the ground type and went some other way. Rock and ground just made a whole lot of sense. Really, the biggest thing being we're tying it back to Mega Steelix. Mega Steelix does lose its rock type, but it keeps the ground type, so it becomes ground and steel. Rock kind of gets upgraded to steel. Something had to keep this iconic rock and ground type because we had 3 different lines have it in Gen 1. So, spoiler alert, Golem and Rhydon, they're not going to be keeping those types because Golem is going to be the rock and fighting type. When you think about types that it could have been, it does just have that look to it, like it wants to brawl and wrestle you. And we all know the theory that like I for sure buy into, that at some point I think it was kind of planned for these to be like traded for each other, and they kind of traded that look based on the fact that like Machoke's head is definitely on Golem, and Graveler's face with his 4 arms are definitely on Machamp. So it seems like they did a whole a Scavalier and Excelcore thing, like in Gen 1, but never actually went through with doing it. So making it part fighting type just makes a whole lot of sense, and we can totally see them getting down in a brawl. So Omastar is rock and what? I used to think these were primary water. They're actually primary rock. They used to be rock water. That's taken by Starmie. So what else could we do it? We could make it a bug, right? And actually, rock water is kind of a great type for these. Bug water looks like it could have been really great too based on what they were based off of. But the fact of the matter is both of those were taken. There's a lot of water types. This is a rock bug that just happens to also like water. It'd probably still know Swift Swim. Maybe they'd given it an ability that boosts its water type moves. Who knows? Up next, we have Kabutops. Another used to be rock water. Another one had that taken from him. But the boy is rock steel, and it makes sense. It's got the big metal scythes. That's the first thing I see when I look at Kabutops is the big scythes. So steel type makes sense. It's got swords on it that it wants to slash with. Aerodactyl, rock and what? Well, we haven't run into a rock flying yet. It could have been rock dragon, right? It could have been a few other different things, but the fact of the matter is it still has wings. And when you just look at Aerodactyl, like it's just so clearly a flying type, and when it mega evolves, it just gets more rocky. I don't really feel the need to take any of those away. Especially since when we see Aerodactyl and its mega, they say like this is more Aerodactyl's like pure form, and it still kept that typing, right? A lot of times we theorize with fossils like, well, if they were their old form they came from, they might not always be a rock type, they might be other things. Makes sense, but here it just kind of makes the most sense to keep all these as rock types. That's what we came out with. I kept putting rock fighting for Aerodactyl when I was making this. I kept almost messing that up. So up next we have the ground type. So we have Rhydon here because Rhydon is actually ground and rock, not rock ground. Now, as I said earlier, to me that's the same thing, but I did find it interesting when I realized that after all these years, like, wow, that's a primary ground type. That's kind of cool. So it's going to keep the ground type. It lost the rock type, and we're going to make it a dragon. It kind of makes sense with this being the first Pokemon ever designed, is what they always say. Being a dragon type is kind of cool. Like, that's a great place to start, right? Something that looks kind of like Godzilla and add other elements to it makes it really cool. It has that draconic look. Can't really go wrong. Up next, we have Sandslash. This wouldn't be a bad, just straight up ground type, but kind of like with Kabutops, it's not hard to look, or it's hard not to look at its claws first, thinking about what they can do. Metal claws, right? Ground and steel makes a whole lot of sense. Once again, this ties us, kind of like we did with Alolan Ninetales. We're going to do that with Sandslash too. Giving it half steel ties it to its Alolan counterpart in Alolan Sandslash, which I like. Once again, it doesn't look like a ground ice type to me, and I don't mind that they did this, but going from ground to steel ice was always kind of weird to me. Like, why is there no sort of connection here? Probably because, right, the steel type didn't exist in Gen 1 and they just didn't add it on. But, like, to me, it just makes too much sense not to have this. Up next, Doug Trio. Do we want to make some sort of type change to this? It does learn a decent amount of coverage moves. It does have some Pokemon that it can connect to, but ultimately, we are connecting it to a Alolan Doug Trio first and foremost, which is already part ground type. So we don't really need to do much to match up with that. It's a mole. It's a good ground type. I think it does its job very fine, and there's nothing about it that it feels like it has to be, especially thinking about will we need some of these other typings later. So once again, it has that tie to Alolan Dugtrio. Does not have to have the tie to Wugtrio because according to Pokemon, they're not actually related. So lies. So up next we have Marowak. We can't have a pure ground here. Can't have it being like a rock type, even though maybe the bone is kind of rocky. Steel for like this hardness is taken. I guess it could be dark because it has kind of an angry look. But you probably know where I'm going. One of the saddest scenes in all of Pokemon with the Cubone and the dead Mother Marowak. I had to go watch the Let's Go Pikachu Eevee scene earlier and cry just because it's just that good. But it just makes sense. It also ties it to its Alolan Marowak counterpart being a part ghost type. I think it makes sense, right? Like, it doesn't look very ghostly when you just look at a normal version of it. But when you look at the lore that it's got with death being such a big part of their line, and like I think bones and stuff kind of go with death and the ghostliness, and with the fact that we have these canon events of this sad ghostly Marowak, it just all makes a lot of sense to me. And Ground Ghost would have been really cool to have this long ago. So here's what we got with all these types. Up next, we have Normal, another really long one. We're going to go ahead and go through this. I think a lot of these are pretty straightforward. There are a few that might take a little extra explaining. Raticate, when you think of rats, you might think of like disease or grossness, or like if you got bit, you'd be worried about what's going to happen to you. To me, that goes on pretty straightforward with being a poison type. I didn't want to make it pure normal because there's a lot of these Pokemon that might want to consider pure normal. I didn't want to burn that right away. It still has the normal connection to its Alolan counterpart, with that being normal and dark. We couldn't make Raticate normal and dark because it would have been just the exact same type. So next up, we go to Persian. Other than the little jewel on its head and on Meowth, the fact that it stands and has the coin on its head, they're pretty normal looking cats. Like, I could almost look at Persian and just say, it's just a cat. It could be alive in real life. But it does have that menacing look. It does have the ties to Giovanni and Team Rocket, the first evil we really come into. So I think the darkness could come in there. And also, once again, this gives us a tie to its Alolan counterpart. It's kind of weird at first thinking of it going from normal dark to just dark later on, but it's almost kind of like Alolan Meowth is maybe just more embracing that dark type. Plus, it doesn't look quite as much like this normal house cat that you'd almost see everywhere. It does look a little bit more rare and out of the ordinary. Next up, Lickitung, normal and wet. Do we make it a water type because it's got tongue, spit? I don't know. As a kid, I kind of thought it should be, right? And what else do we tie it to? It's got kind of a draconic body, right? And you can imagine a derby dragon just kind of sticking its tongue out. So really, that's all I can think of. I know it does learn Dragon Tail. I don't know if it learns, I think maybe Dragon Breath too. I'm not sure about that though. But might as well be a dragon type, right? It's not going to be overpowered or anything. It doesn't have great stats. So even though in Gen 1 I know they didn't want to use a whole lot of dragons, I guess lizards sometimes can just kind of feel draconic. So up next we got Porygon. This one I would have loved to made it normal and electric. It learns electric moves. It's a lot of times the technological feel feels like it could be electric. Normal ghost might be kind of interesting. We decided to end up not going with that. And then the more I thought about it, I kind of just looked at it and realized like, well, steel's not awful on it because to me, like when I think of metal and technology and computers, I think those could all go kind of together. And I think it does kind of have a glossy, shiny look to it that looks like maybe it's actually is made out of some sort of steel if it's supposed to be like robotic. I don't really know enough to know how much this really makes sense, but I kind of almost feel like Porygon always just felt like kind of such a weird normal type anyway. I feel like it could have been like steel and psychic, electric psychic. I don't know. There's a lot of things it could have been, but I wanted to keep it part normal. So normal steel felt as good as any, and that's a type that we don't have yet in real life, so we'd be adding a new type. Coming up next, we have Snorlax. This could be a candidate for being just pure normal. It's just a big it's just big Snorlax, big guy who likes to block the way, who likes to eat, who likes to sleep. But we've heard the term sleeping like a rock before, and I think that's kind of funny. But also just like being this big boulder type thing that's always blocking the way for people. It's kind of mountainous. When it has its Gigantamax form, it's almost like a rock, like the earth, like stuff's literally growing on it. We could have went with ground off of that. We could have went with grass since the Gmax form literally has grass, and since it does love eating stuff like berries and fruit so much. But to me, I kind of just like to be in a rock type. It does learn moves like roll out naturally. It learns stuff like rock slides. To me, that just made a lot of sense. Up next, we got Kangaskhan being normal, and we're going to go ahead and just make it a ground type. Once again, you've probably heard a lot of theories before where Kangaskhan and Cubone have this tie to each other. A lot of people think Cubone looks like it could have been the baby Kangaskhan in its pouch, and that maybe way back when it was supposed to be like a Kangaskhan that had died that became Cubone's mother. Was it supposed to be a normal and ground type all along? Who knows? But we got Marowak, we got Kangaskhan. They're not actually related, but if we made the types a little closer, we could still have a little more of that speculation that keeps it alive. And to me, that's fun. So next up, we have Tauros being a normal type. When you think about bulls, It does have a pretty diverse move pool, but I mean, it's got the horns that looks like maybe they could be kind of steel. That's kind of already taken though. But you think about bullfighting, whether or not you like it, like the two words kind of just hop together in our brains. But it does learn a plethora of fighting moves, and its regional variants are fighting type or part fighting type. So we would have that connection being normal and fighting, and then we'd see in Paldea it just becomes more of a fighting type. It becomes a little more aggressive. To me, that kind of makes sense. Up next with Ditto, this could go a couple ways. For a second, I was like, well, as a kid, I thought it should have been related to Muck and Grimer because it was gooey. So it's like normal poison. That doesn't really make sense. Maybe it's kind of ghostly. I don't know. There's kind of a lot of ways you could go with it. But in the end, I think normal psychic just made so much sense because something about like having the power and being able to transform into other things feels like a very psychic thing for the time. But not to mention, we all have the theories that it was in some way related to Mew. A lot of people think that it's a failed Mew cloning experiment when they were trying to clone Mewtwo because they both have their even stats across the board. They both have their pink coloration, and both of their shinies are blue, and they're the only two Pokemon that I can think of off the top of my head anyway that learn Transform. So there is a lot of stuff between the two that people think could be a tie there, so it makes sense that it would be part psychic type. Up next, we've got Chansey. Chansey and Wigglytuff were two of the toughest choices to make because they kind of want to be the same type. Both of them are kind of fighting who gets to be the fairy type. And I know Wigglytuff in real life was granted the fairy type, but to me, when I look at Chansey, I see fairy more than I see normal. What about this is really normal? It's very out of the ordinary. It doesn't feel like just some normal animal. To me, it feels like it kind of should have been fairy all along, but that type just didn't exist in Gen 1. And then I guess just because it was already so bulky and hard to kill, they just didn't want to give it the fairy type when the fairy type came around. But to me, it fits the fairy type a lot more because its whole thing is being nurturing and healing and having that fairy type of feel to it. So next up, with Wigglytuff, we could have tried to move one of these, like Wigglytuff could have had the normal type taken away and been fairy or fairy and something else. But to me, Jigglypuff and Wigglytuff are very normal Pokemon because like they're just these cute little bunny looking animals. But also a lot of people kind of feel like the normal type is kind of the pseudo sound type. A lot of sound based Pokemon that we see in later generations have the normal type tacked on. A lot of normal moves or sound based moves like Hyper Voice, like Relic Song, like Sing. Those are all normal type moves. So it's kind of the unofficial sound type. In fact, it would have been cool if it were just always the sound type and normal Pokemon were either sound, fairy, or like just whatever element they were taken off of. But like normal never really had to exist. That saying, I like the normal type because like a lot of normal Pokemon, but the sound type like kind of almost makes more sense. So it makes sense to kind of just keep it as a normal type. To me, it's very much more normal and sound based than Chansey. So it's what gets to be the pure normal of this region. Up next, we got the fairy, and it's just Clefable. We could overthink this. We could try to add like, well, it's got the moonstone. It's tied to the moon. Is it rock type? Is it psychic type? I think it just represents fairy really well. Fairy's in its name, then Fable's in its name, fairy tales. I think just pure fairy is a great way to start with this, and it just has that iconic fairy look. So it's just going to stay just fairy. Up next, we have the flying type. So I did kind of something weird here. You probably noticed when you were looking at the normal types that all of the normal flyings were missing. And that's because what an overdone type. Why did we always have to do that? Why couldn't they have just been the flying type, right? The flying type's always been weird because, like, it was the bird type, then it was the flying type, and really, like, there's kind of flying. It probably should have just been the air type or the wind type. There's just so much to it, but we're going to make all of these primary flying. We'll see what types they end up with, but someone somewhere has to just be pure flying. And when I look at Pidgeot, when I look at its design, it doesn't really seem that normal. It's got that really long plumage on its hair. It almost looks eagle-like, especially when it mega evolves. Everything about it looks powerful and kind of regal. It's not something I would expect to just walk outside and see. If I walk outside and see an eagle or a big hawk, I'm kind of like, "Ooh, that's cool," right? Like it's not just like I went outside and saw a sparrow, or something like that. So I think just pure flying is fantastic for it. When it mega evolved, it definitely should have been that. There was no need for it to keep the normal type. Uh, Looking at Firo, it does have the word fear in its name, so it's like, do you want to make it a ghost type because of that? But it doesn't really seem ghostly. You could maybe consider dark type. I kind of get the same vibe from it as a shoebill stork. Not really necessarily the design, but just the fact that looking at them, they're very like scary and unsettling looking. But at the end of the day, they're kind of just there, right? Like I've heard that shoebill storks are like super dangerous and powerful, but they're pretty chill towards humans. Like unless they're feeling provoked or like they're looking for prey, they're like pretty chill birds, even though like I can't look at the screen right now because it's so unnerving because it won't stop looking at me. Firo does have kind of a menacing look, but at the end of the day, it kind of does just come from a Spearow. Like they're just they are kind of normal looking birds. Maybe I'm a little bit off with that, but and I kind of like them having something like the stab double edge with how sharp their beak looks, and something I feel like has to keep the flying normal. And to me, that's the most normal of the birds in this region. I think I'll get hated on that. You could have easily done flying dark, but to me, I just think it's intense and protective. I don't think it's evil, so I didn't want to make it the dark type. So next up, we have Dodrio being flying type. A lot of people are like, "This is a bird. Why does it even fly?" So flying in ground kind of makes sense, especially if you're connecting it to an ostrich, which spend their time on the ground. They're very deadly and fast on the ground. And then there's the old like wise tale about how when they get scared, they stick their heads in the ground to hide. I don't know if that's actually ever happened. This is probably a fake image, right? Like I don't think they actually do that. And I think ostriches are actually probably a lot smarter than we're giving them credit for. But yeah, deadly on the ground, flying ground to me makes a whole lot of sense. Up next, we've got Farfetch'd once again. What's normal about this? I know it was kind of supposed to be based off of like that what was it, like that proverb about a duck bringing a leek or an onion or whatever. Yeah. So sure, but it just still doesn't look like a normal bird. Like it's carrying around a leek. It's got this mean, intense look to it. It was kind of rare to find in the normal games, from what I remember, right? So like, and then it goes on to being Surfetched, which is a fighting type in the Galar region. So fighting and flying makes a lot of sense to me. It does have that intense look about it, like it's ready to just throw hands in any given minute. I think these should have been fighting and flying anyway in the Galar region. They're just fighting, so this gives them that kind of mix between the two. So coming up next, this is what we got here. Coming up next, we have the bug type. This was pretty tough too. There were a lot of these that I felt like wanted to be two types, and they kind of wanted to have the same type. We had to make some tough decisions. Butterfree, I feel like we've all kind of always wanted it to be a bug psychic type. It's like Psychic and Golduck. It learns so many psychic moves, and when you look at its Gmax form, to me, it just looks like even more intense. But it's known for all like using stuff like being able to put you to sleep. I don't think it actually learns hypnosis, right? Doesn't it just learn sleep powder? But it should learn hypnosis. It does learn things like confusion and psychic. It just all around, it just always felt more like a psychic type, and they felt like they had to make a bug flying because butterfly. I don't know. That just always felt kind of silly to me. We made it bug psychic like it always should have been. Beedrill was really hard because it's usually a bug and poison type, and I think that's quite fitting. But there are other Pokemon that want to be bug poison types, and I feel like a lot of bugs want to be poison types. One of my hot takes is I almost feel like bugs didn't need to exist because we had poison and dark types or just other types that they fit in with anyway. A lot of people would hate on me for that. I completely understand it. Feel free to come roast me. I'm also just not huge on bugs in real life or bug Pokemon. I made a bug steel. It's kind of an overused type in Pokemon, but it's a really good type. And literally to me, especially when you look at the Mega, to me the focus is like the stingers, right? Plus, it was really hard to take Psychic away from Venomoth. It has the word Venom in its name, right? Like I wanted to make Venomoth just regular bug and then make Beedrill bug and poison like it had always been. But the more I thought about it, the stingers made sense to me to make it a steel type. And Venomoth is based off of a moth that is poisonous. And when you look at it, it's got venom in the name. You just can't take that away from it. That would be a bummer, having to have it go so far backwards when it's not that strong of a Pokemon anyway. Up next, Parasect. I thought about maybe like Bug Ghost because it is like slowly becoming zombified. That would have made it a lot better of a Pokemon. I don't know. It's based off of a big mushroom type of thing, right? And it's like a parasite inside of it. Bug and grass just made a whole lot of sense to me. So I just went ahead and kept it as that. Once again with Scyther, do we make this like bug and dragon? That's a type we've always wanted. If it ain't broke, right? I don't know. Bug flying to me just works well with it. It's got the big wings. It likes to use its technician dual wing beats. I don't want to take that away from it, you know? I just think that's pretty fitting. Plus, I feel like a big part of it is like when it evolves, it gets cooler types, right? Like bug flying might feel kind of boring, but like it gets to become bug steel when it evolves, right? It gets to become bug rock when it evolves. So I think that's kind of fun. Pinsir, you know, we could have made it bug fighting. It does learn a lot of fighting moves, but like to me, that kind of cheapens Heracross. Like if they're the same thing, and like Heracross just seemed like it was made to be a better Pinsir. I don't know. I thought about doing Bug Normal because that's a Pokemon we don't have in real life. This thing learns a lot of normal type moves, and as menacing as it looks, at the end of the day, he kind of is just a normal bug with pincers, right? Could have done Bug Dark because he has that menacing look. Uh, to me, I think it's just a really good normal bug, and I might get hated on for that, but like I just don't hate having a regular straight up bug in the original region. And lots of bugs have pincers. It's not like it's anything too crazy. Plus, then the upgrade to bug flying, like it literally just looks like a pincer that gained wings, right? It got a little more mean, but yeah, this is what I decided to go with. I feel like on a few of these bugs, I'm not going to be too loved for what I chose, but they just made the most sense to me. Coming up next, we have Dragon with Dragonite. I wanted to make it Dragon Water. That was taken already. You could do like Dragon Fire. Nothing about it's really fiery. I did consider Dragon Fairy just because it is cute. It does seem like it's like mystical and whatnot. It's the original dragon. Dragons fly. It gets a lot of good use out of dragon flying. 10 out of 10 times if I had the choice, I would make it Dragon Water in real life, but that was already taken. So we had to go with what made sense to me. Dragon Flying made the most sense, so that's what we're going to go with Dragonite. With Ghost, this might surprise people. This might make people mad. I could have just went pure Ghost, right? Like, it's just a Ghost type Pokemon. I could have kept it Ghost Poison. Whoopsie, I didn't do that. I needed that typing later. I went with Ghost Dark, which, even if I didn't need the typing later, I think this makes more sense. The whole thing of Gengar at first was like it was a shadow. And, which, once again, I get. The Dark type didn't exist back then. The Poison type kind of was the Dark type, which makes sense because I think in the TCG, even when the Dark type came around, weren't they poison for a while? And then when the dark type actually came, the poisons became dark, I think. So like they are pretty similar typings. Like poison is a very dark and evil thing to do. So ghost poison, I guess, did make sense for the time. But when the dark type came around, I wish they would have retconned it because like they're the shadows. Like there's the rumor that it's Clefable's shadow, they made it also like less dark and less shadowy in its design as it went on. I just think it would have been so perfect. To me, it has ghost and dark qualities to it, and I think that would have been really good. So that's what I ended up going with. And speaking of poison, let's go on to the poison types next. We got my boy, my favorite Pokemon of all time, Nidoking. Poison type, I would love to keep it poison dark because I love that typing. With sheer force, I love almost nothing more in the world than clicking Earth Power with sheer force. And it could still have that. But the thing to me is Nidoking, Nidoqueen, only one of them can keep that type. They're technically different Pokemon. Had they been made in a later time, I wonder if they would have been the same Pokemon. But they're not. They have different types. So to me, with what it does, it could be a lot of things because of its coverage. But like when you look at them side by side, they are kind of draconic, and Nidoking does have the bigger teeth. It is more muscular and fierce. Poison Dragon's actually really cool on this. Once again, Dragon doesn't really take advantage of sheer force that much, but that's okay. It's still kind of an amazing Pokemon to get that typing. Makes a whole lot of sense. And so then Nidoqueen is going to keep that type. To me, it's just got that Gaia, Mother Earth type of feel a little more. Still very powerful, but also like a little more like loving. You would expect it to like, I don't know, just be more connected to the earth. Maybe I'm going crazy with that. But next up, we have Golbat. Poison and flying just makes a lot of sense. It is still a bat, right? Like, Dark could have made sense. A lot of things you could have done. It was on the Agatha team, so, like, could it have been Ghosty? But we can all argue that Agatha was more of a poison type trainer than ghost type trainer. But that's okay. She chose Ghost. That's what we're going to give her. But yeah, bats fly, right? I mean, Batman doesn't. Right here, he's kind of just gliding. But bats do fly, so poison and flying, it just makes a whole lot of sense. Up next, we got Arbok. Could be just straight up a poison type. I think a lot of us would probably agree poison and dark makes a whole lot of sense. Poison and dragon could have been cool too on Arbok being like serpentine, and I think it does learn dragon moves, but like it just has that dark evil type of feel to it. Weezing was really hard, man, because like Weezing and Muck both kind of really like being pure poison, so that got kind of confusing. I gave Weezing Poison and Ghost. I almost gave it Poison and Flying because it looks like it's kind of based off of a cloud, and I was like, maybe I could do something else with Golbat, but that felt silly. I don't know, like it looks very solid, but I think it's supposed to be based off of a poison cloud, so that could be kind of like misty and ghost-like. And a lot of times when you see ghost specter type things, they kind of have that foggy look that I think could go along with what Weezing likes to do with its design. Maybe it's kind of a weird choice. I do think it learns ghost type moves, so wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Then next up we got Muck. We're gonna keep it pure poison, right? It looks just like it's just this straight up toxic sludge. It is poison in its purest form. I don't know why I kept the question mark there. It is what it is, and once again, it keeps that connection to Muck, Alolan Muck, who would still have that half poison type in its different form. Up next we have fighting. We are very close to the end here, and we've got Machamp. It's fighting. Does it need to be anything else? To me, it really just encapsulates fighting really well, based off of like those 100-handed ones from Greek mythology, having the extra hands, just being muscular, an all-around great fighter. That's pretty much what there is to it, right? Like his, I don't know, Machoke almost looks like it's got a dragony face, but like, let's not just force that, right? Next up, we have Primate being a fighting type. Could have kind of stayed pure fighting. It's got the Pokédex entry of being so mad that it dies. It's got the connection to Annihilate. Why not just speed up the process, right? We'll give it the Ghost type now. Pure fighting, that's taken. It doesn't, to me, connect to a whole lot else. Like the rage could maybe make it dark, but we know it's going to turn into a ghost type. We know that it's got that connection to its own death, so it kind of makes sense anyway. It's just a pre-ghost. So in this scenario, we're giving it the ghost type a little early. Next up, we have Hitmonlee, and he has this intense look that I feel like he would not fight fair, right? Like he has that fighting dark type down to a T. You feel like it would take all these like jabs. It would definitely kick at you while you weren't looking. But it just has that menacing look to it as well. So I think fighting dark makes a whole lot of sense for Hitmonlee. Hitmonchan's kind of tough then, right? Like, do we want to do fighting fairy to make it like, oh, the other side of the coin, light and dark, right? I thought about maybe like fighting normal, but that got taken. And then I thought about just fighting maybe bug because like a lot. I think like a lot of the older like superhero Power Ranger designs were supposed to be based off of looking kind of bug like. It has the big bug eyes. I went with fighting fire just because like fire's light. There's still the light and dark, which is kind of cool. But in some of its Pokédex entries, it talks about punching so fast that it can burn a foe. Which, by the way, it needs a signature move that can burn. That would be really cool. But so that makes sense. Like if it's punching so fast that it's hot, it has the capability for fire, right? It learns fire punch. So fire and fighting would actually be kind of cool on Hitmonchan. And how great would it be to not see it on a starting type Pokemon, right? So yeah, that's what we ended up with on these. And up next we have the Psychic type. This was kind of hard too. I'm going to start out with a hot take. Alakazam is a great, just pure psychic type, and there wasn't much else it could do, but I kind of needed that for other reasons. So I made it Psychic Steel because it has its steel spoons. And hear me out. When it Mega Evolves, it gets more spoons. So clearly, those spoons are very important to its design. And I do like how it's like literally attacking with the Psychic spoons here. But I think that's kind of cool. Like the spoons are part of its design. I imagine them being made out of steel and metal. So I just think that's kind of a fun little silly thing. But also, yeah, I wanted Pure Psychic for something else. I considered the Pure Psychic for Hypno, but I decided to go Psychic Poison. I think you run into like Drowsies and Hypnos. In Koga's gym in the original game. So like you're running into the psychic types there being with the poison types. But also like the whole thing about like the way it sleeps you is in such like an evil and poisonous way. It's almost like it's poisoning your mind. And they do learn, I think they learn like smog and poison gas and stuff like that naturally. So to me, it just kind of makes sense for Hypno to be part poison type, even though design wise, I don't know if that really makes sense. But you know, like hypnotizing people against their will, that's a toxic thing to do. So come on, Hypno. Mr. Mime is normally a psychic and fairy type. I don't think it's worthy of the fairy type. I kind of wanted to make it psychic and normal because it's just a guy. It's just a mime, right? If you ever listen to the Hidden Power podcast, a lot of times about humanoid Pokemon, they'll just be like, he's just a man, right? It's just a guy, and that's what this is. So I'm like, is it just a normal type? Like it's literally lives with Ash Ketchum's mom, like a roommate, you know. But I made it just pure psychic because psychic normal I liked better for Ditto. I couldn't double up on that. So to me, just making it pure psychic, like there's really not much else to it to me, so I think that's a good typing for it. And Mew, we gave the Psychic and Fairy type because Mew does have that pixie look. It has the mystical thing about it being a mythical Pokemon. It can learn Fairy type moves. It's very powerful. Everything about it becoming a cute little fairy that's also extremely powerful. It just makes so much sense. I wish they would have done that anyway. If Mew ever gets a Mega, it needs to be Psychic and Fairy. Mewtwo, you know, pure Psychic's out of the equation. When it Mega Evolves, it does get Psychic and Fighting. Psychic and Dark makes a whole lot of sense, especially if you watch the first movie. It encapsulates the villain, the dark side, so well. And it does just have that menacing look to it. And that makes it and Mew really kind of become that whole yin and yang, light and dark side of the coin thing. Sure, he does come to his senses, but like, even though the dark type's like the evil type in Japanese, like, I feel like not all dark Pokemon are evil. They just have that darkness to them. Mewtwo overcomes that, but I think it's still a fantastic choice for being psychic and dark, especially in this picture, man. He's got it. So anyway, yeah, that's what we have with the psychic types. So looking at each of these types, we can see how many types I have added. It's very possible I miscounted these. But with the fire type, we have 8. We have 6 grass types. Now, this is primary or secondary. 14 have the water type to some capacity. 6 have electric. 7 steel. 9 dark, kind of a lot. 3 ice. 7 rock. 8 ground. 14 normal. 6 fairy. 12 flying. 8 bug. 6 dragon. 5 ghost. 11 poison. 9 fighting. 11 psychic. I feel like that probably balanced it out a decent amount compared to what it would have been normally. I didn't go through and count how many there actually had been before. But to me, I think this is a fun exercise because once again, not every Pokemon ends up being the best type for it. That could be a whole other video. You could go through and actually say, okay, what type should all of these be? But to me, it's more fun to say like, let's make this as diverse as possible and still try to make as much sense as possible too. So that's what I'm going to try to go through and do with each region. I will space these videos out a decent amount because they take a lot of work to go through and debate what types they're going to be and put them all on paper. So what do you think? What region should be next? Should we do the obvious thing and go on to Johto? Is it more fun if I just kind of hop around? Do I go like to the smallest dexes and work my way up to bigger? Probably Johto, right? But like, I want to hear what you think. What's next? What should we do for our no duplicate type series? And I want to hear your thoughts on this. What type should I have done better? Are there some that could have been swapped to even things up? Once again, I want to hear your thoughts. I want you to comment below. Tell me what you think some cool types would be to do this. Just remember, no duplicate types. So I want to thank you for stopping by.